A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Chapter 9, verses 1 to 8. At that time, getting into a boat, Jesus crossed over and came into his own city. And behold, some people brought to him a paralytic, lying on a bed. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven." And behold, some of the scribes said to themselves, "This man is blaspheming." But Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, "Why do you think evil in your hearts? For which is easier, to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Rise and walk'? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He then said to the paralytic, "Rise, pick up your bed and go home." And he rose and went home. When the crowd saw it, they were afraid, and they glorified God, who had given such authority to men. The Gospel of the Lord. Dear friends, we are continuing with the same readings from book of Amos. We went through chapter 5, and then now today we have a reading from chapter 7, and of course also Matthew is just moving from chapter to chapter. Now in the first reading, we see much more details as to how Amos was confronting Jeroboam, and here we see Amaziah trying to push away Amos, trying to tell him to move away from Israel. A little bit of historical context here. When Jeroboam was ruling Israel, and of course there in Judah, Uzziah was ruling, also called as Zechariah, and these two were living in peace, and it was not a very bad time as such. And Assyria, which is going to take whole of Israel as exiles into exile, was dormant at the point of time. It was in the stage of sleeping. While we see Jeroboam also, because of his power, he was able to win over and was able to get back certain territories in Transjordan area, and to certain extent people gave all this victory, sovereignty, power, everything, all this success, everything, people started attributing it to various other gods, and then slowly people were moving away, and more money, religion becomes a problem. Religion starts persecuting in the name of religion. This institution becomes a problem for especially the little ones, the poor ones, the oppressed, and lot of sins started entering at this point of time. And that is why it is the time when actually Israel was living at the maximum of sin, because of their self-sufficiency, because they were living a very rich life, and they started persecuting the poor people, and there is a lot of infights, and then nearby smaller countries were also being oppressed. This is an historical context. At that point, Amos comes and then gives his prophecy. Of course, the Lord has sent him, and Amaziah confronts Amos saying, "Are you a prophet?" He says, "No, I'm just an ordinary person. But the Lord sent me here to tell this to you, to Jeroboam, to you, to your families, and every one of you are going to get into exile." And very strong words being exchanged here. And then Amos is very, very clear about God's message. Because of the sinful living, there was no justice, there was no righteousness. This is a problem when we live in self-sufficiency, when we have too much of success, too much of glory, too much of money, too much of power. When it comes, there is no place to God. And we see how this person who is supposed to help Jeroboam, Amaziah, is the one who is actually misleading. He is a guide. He was supposed to be the guide and try to help the king to move in the right direction. And we see in the gospel, beautiful gospel passage, you see the friends bring this paralytic, and of course Jesus is in his own place, Capernaum, which is his place. And here we see how he addresses this paralytic as a son, a lot of love and affection being manifested here. But here again he is being judged for forgiving sins and for using blasphemy. Of course, he is God, and therefore it is his right to say that. But very interesting lesson here in the gospel passage is this: the role of the friends. It is not the merit of the paralytic that he had come there. It is the friends who took pain, who took trouble, they trusted in Jesus, and they brought him inside. With a lot of dramatic way it was brought in, and Jesus heals. From both the readings, one simple lesson that we can drive home is this: Amasya is a friend, supposed to be a friend, or the one who's supposed to guide Jeroboam, but he is the one who is misleading. Contrary, we see in the gospel, the friends of this paralytic bring this person to the right one, lead the paralytic to Jesus, to God. And there we see blessing. In the first reading, we see the curse. Dear friends, this can happen in our lives as well. We as friends of the others, we need to take people closer to God. We need to tell them what is right, what is wrong, where they need to change. If we know that someone who is very close to us living a sinful life, going in a wrong direction, deviating from basics, we have to channelize them. While at the same time, our own friends, we need to also check every time whether our friends, so-called our friends, are they leading us to God or are they taking us away from God? And if we have good friends and if we are good friends of the others, I am sure we will be in the right direction, because salvation is not all about myself and only oneself. Salvation is also communitarian. I have an obligation towards the others, and others also have an obligation towards me.
We offer you, O God divine,